Today, we're going to talk to you about how not to lose your family, what mistakes you don't want to make, and how to prepare for becoming an expat. Now, we covered this briefly in the 1-year expat guide. We're going to go into it a little bit more in depth, and we're going to talk about how to get your house in order, how far in advance to talk to family members, how not to lose a family. And Chrissy was out at the golf course yesterday. We're going to see whether she can hit a ball at the driving range. And we went to a Valentine's Day celebration with some expats, and you'll get to see Chrissy dressed up for Valentine's Day. I also posted a question on Philippine expats with 48,000 members on Facebook, and I asked them how did they prepare for expatting to make sure that they kept things evergreen with their family. We're going to go ahead and share with you expat comments that they provided in answer to that question. First, let me share with you my own experience. My family grew up in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we were a swim family, and we were really, really tight because my kids were always competing in junior nationals and attending out-of-town swim meets, and I would announce some of the meets. And we had a very, very tight nuclear family. I have 3 children, a boy, a girl, and a boy. And each of them has reacted differently. And then I have 2 sisters that are also older than me that are very, very important that I want to maintain that relationship as well. During COVID, when I was online and I thought I had met somebody, I mentioned to him that I had this fantasy, back then I guess it was a fantasy, of going to the Philippines. I didn't get good feedback. My sisters saw it primarily through the lens of these women are too young, this is not natural, not normal. My children saw it through the lens of abandonment. They didn't like the idea of me abandoning them. I had already divorced their mother after 27 years of marriage. That's one type of abandonment. And now after 12 years of rehabilitation and putting the house back in order where everybody got along in the family, there was another type of abandonment potentially on the horizon. And they were pretty negative about the concept as well. But I continue to pursue it. After a 2-year hiatus, I gave it some strong thought. And when I met Chrissy online, I was traveling in South America. And after 3 weeks or 4 weeks, I had an inkling that Chrissy was the one. And I reached that point in time where I needed to inform my family members as early as possible. So now this is the second time the subject came up. I had been traveling and I had left the country for 5 months a year, usually 2.5 months or 3 months at a time. For the previous 5 years, I was going away a lot. And they were getting used to me going away and coming back. So my family was a little bit more acclimated to the idea of me being away. And it was always tough coming back home. You kind of got stink eye for a week or two, but then everybody kind of forgot that you left them for 3 months and life went back to normal. I have 6 grandchildren also. 2 have been born in the last 3 months, and I have not seen them. So these are all the types of things that you have to deal with. Grandchildren coming along, birthdays that you're missing, even potentially weddings that you could be missing, and funerals. So in my case, I called back home while I was in South America. I broached the subject with my kids. I let them know I had met somebody. I got a kind of a cold response. Nobody was very favorable. They all focused in on the fact that this is crazy. Maybe you just met a woman who wanted your money. Why would a young woman find you as a viable partner? If you think this woman's after anything but your money, you're out of your mind. And, it was just a 20-minute phone call from South America, letting them know that I had it in mind. I was going to go to the Philippines and meet Chrissy. And I just had an inkling she was the one. And I kind of broke the ice. And then when I got to the Philippines and I met Chrissy, after 3, 5, 7 days of being with Chrissy, I posted a few pictures on Facebook of us together, and I got crickets. My friends, my older high school friends and college friends, not many people gave positive reinforcement. No family members chimed in. Way to go, Dad. I got a few people that were positive, but it was more crickets than anything. Then, I called them on the phone. phone, or maybe I'd called them before the Facebook postings, and I let them know that, you know, things went better than could have been hoped for. And it was a reality that this was probably going to happen. And Chrissy and I were going to spend 2 months together, really, you know, shaking it out, making sure it was true, making sure we were a match. And then I planned to go home for 21 days. And I did. I went back to America in July, and I had sort of a mixed reaction. Nobody wanted to talk about the Philippines. They didn't want to hear about the food. They didn't want to hear about the climate. They didn't want to hear about the housing. They didn't want me to talk about the Philippines. They were happy to have me come visit, but they didn't want to talk about the Philippines. And they certainly didn't want to talk to Chrissy, and they didn't want me having video chats all the time around them. So I needed to find private places to do that. And the first child, my eldest son that I went to go visit with, I probably didn't take their request that I keep it to myself strong enough. And they, kind of got their nose bent out of shape a little bit. And that visit didn't go too well. My next visit with my youngest son went better. I really kept it to myself as much as possible. And then by the time I went to visit my daughter back east in Boston, I pretty much kept it to myself completely. And that visit went better. And then the next phase occurred when I came back to the Philippines, and I did something that many of you won't have to worry about, that you won't do, but I launched a video YouTube channel. And some of the thumbnails had subjects like how to seduce a Filipina, you know, kind of sexual innuendo and racy thumbnail titles. That's what YouTube is. If you just put on the thumbnail, you know, if you don't entice, it's like a book title in a bookstore. It has to say something mysterious and enticing. And some of the titles they were probably embarrassed about. And just the whole idea of telling their friends and letting their friends know that their father was dating a 30-year-old embarrassed them. And they kind of went into a shell for about 90 days. So my first 90 days back, I got a lot of the cold shoulder. My daughter, of all people, was the one who was most communicative with me and most willing and trying to keep the relationship strong and keep an understanding and kind of see my point of view. She didn't want to talk about it too much, but she was the one that was really most understanding. My oldest son kind of cut me off for 2 or 3 months and then gradually allowed communication to resume. My youngest son, who was like my best friend, and I would see more, we lived near each other. For forever, we were like constant companions. He, for some mysterious reason, kind of shut me out of his life for 4 months and then only gradually let me back in. So here we are. I've been back now for 6 months, 7 months, and all 3 of my children are talking with me. I wouldn't say that it's robust, but we're in that phase of thawing and getting used to it. They see that Chrissy and I have been together now for 9 months and that we are living our best life. And my 2 sisters, I mentioned earlier, very, very important to me, older sisters, you know, I was really, really worried that they were going to just say, forget it. This is ridiculous. You know, she's 37 years younger than you. We won't have any part of it. But they were surprisingly open-minded. My older sister video chatted with Chrissy. She's the only family member who's video chatted with Chrissy so far. You know, I can only hope that the trend will continue. I don't think that I did everything perfectly. So today what I want to do is I want to talk to you about how not to lose your family. One of the things that's really interesting here is I have met quite a few expats who have not returned home to see their families in quite a long time. I met somebody recently who hadn't been home in 10 years. I met 2 other expats who hadn't been home in between 5 and 9 years. And it kind of surprised me that they stopped going home to see their adult children or their sisters or their siblings or their parents who might still be alive. It seemed very surprising to me. You know, that's not my goal. I always thought I'd come home for 3 weeks or a month every year. Now that I'm here, you know, Chrissy doesn't have the ability to come to the U.S., my home country, yet. We'll be married this time next year, probably, and it'll take 18 months to get her a spousal visa. So it's up to 2.5 years away before she can come home. I want to go home to see the family, but I want to bring Chrissy when I go. I really don't want to go by myself, and I don't want to leave Chrissy here for a month. I may not go back this year at all, and I may wait for a potential wedding next year. So it's hard. It's expensive. You're separated from your filipina. It's not ideal when you're in a relationship to just pick up and leave for 3 weeks or a month. So what can we do and what can we learn from my experience and some of the other experiences? And then in a minute, I'm going to share with you what the Philippine expat community of expats had to say about this subject. Now, first and foremost, you need to let them know as early as possible what you're thinking. And I tried to do this. I kind of told them I was watching YouTubes on the Philippines and I was interested in, traveling to Asia, maybe resettling and living out of the country full time. I broached the subject with them. They didn't really want to talk about it much. And you couldn't get them to stop and look at anything. So one of the things I wish I had done, I was watching YouTube channels like this one, kind of religiously for many years before actually acting on my journey. And the kids, they just think the Philippines is some third world country where everybody's dirt poor and everybody's scamming and it's not a reliable place to go and it's dangerous, and they hear about, terrorism, and it's really, really hard for them to know what you've learned. You've spent maybe hundreds of hours watching videos on my channel and other vloggers' channels, and you're gradually, it's like you're taking college courses and becoming an expat. You're not willing to just run to some third world country unprepared, and you're not going unless you're pretty confident you can find success. But one of the things I wish I had done is I wish I had shown somebody a picture of the house that I'm living in. We did a video with a house tour. I wish I had shown, prepared maybe just 3 video clips, 30 seconds, and say, hey, here's an expat living in the Philippines. He's paying $900 a month for this house that in California would cost $7,000 a month. And he's, living in a first world environment. Here is an expat, and here's his monthly budget. And here's what he's paying for his health insurance, and here's what he's paying for housing. Chrissy and I, we have one video, which is our absolute favorite video, and it's our love story. And the title of it is, Should I Stay or Should I Go? I Left Her in the Philippines. If people can't comprehend how a 30-year-old age difference might work, or how a woman in the Philippines could learn to love a man much older, you might want to share that video with them. It's an interview format where Chrissy answers questions independently, I answer questions independently, but it would give them, my family, that's the one video they agreed to watch. And I was so happy that they watched it. And I got really positive feedback from them about that video. So I would do that. I would, show them, hey, look at this housing for this price. Here's what he pays in medical insurance, this expat. Here's where he lives for $900 a month in a luxury house with, views and pools. There's a lot of guys doing this. There's 2,000 expats in Dumaguete. Half of them are vloggers. So if you could just maybe put together, 60 seconds or have queued up, minute 3:14 of a particular budget video, minute 10 of a particular healthcare video. So people understand there's healthcare available and the type of life that you're thinking about. The hard part is what are you doing with a really young woman? And that's why the video on Should I Stay or Should I Go? I Left Her in the Philippines, our love story, is really kind of, I think, a wonderful way to show people the type of relationship that you're wanting to pursue, the best life that you're trying to live. Now, other best practices. Number one is, really it's all about communication and regular communication. So if you think you're going to expat in a year, well, you got a lot of logistics to take care of. We covered that in the 1-year plan. You got your finances, you got your health, you got to make sure you're going to have your hobbies waiting for you. But you need to start communicating during that 1 year. You may need help getting your storage situation squared away, getting your house rented, someone to help take care of your mail. So you need to start talking to your family members early and make sure that they understand that this is not some wild hair idea that you have, and you're not going to end up homeless on the beach in the Philippines and they're going to have to bail you out. If you're normally visiting every 2 weeks your grandchildren, you're normally visiting once a month, you might want to increase the pace. The most important thing is you have to find a time to have these conversations. These are not the kind of conversations you can just slip in while your daughter's taking care of the kids and making them breakfast. You have to find a time and let them know that you want to talk to them about something important. And then in this conversation, you need to let them know how your finances are going to be taken care of. You need to let them know what your healthcare situation is and how it's going to be taken care of. You need to let them know that your budget can accommodate what you're planning. You need to let them know that you're not going to sign over your life savings and their inheritance to somebody that you haven't met yet. You kind of need to cover all these subjects, and then you need to have regular conversations. You may want to move into a video format, video chat conversation before you leave. Get them used to video chatting with you, even though you live in town or even though you don't normally do that. You need to make sure you're on Facebook and other social media platforms so that you can keep up and see the birthday photos and put videos online and have them put videos online and have them start to do that with you even before you leave, but really important once you get here. You might want to consider having a group chat, kind of the way people do interventions for drug users. You know, call your children together for a nice meal, call the family together at a time where people are willing to give you an hour or 90 minutes to lay out your vision. Explain to them how you've done research, you've joined the Facebook groups, you've watched channels like mine, you might have made a 2 or 3 week exploratory trip out here, and how you might have even met somebody, and really kind of broach the subject with the whole family as a group is a pretty good strategy as well. You want to talk to them about your schedule that you're planning for visits. If you're planning to come home 3 weeks a year, twice a year, you're planning to give them airplane tickets to come visit you. You want to broach the subject of them coming to visit you. It's really expensive to bring a family with kids out to the Philippines and hard for people to get time off, and it's very long travel. So it's kind of impractical. I don't think it happens very often, but you want to start to talk about it as a possibility. Another thing you can do to stay engaged with people back home is do like shared activities. You can create a video chat and maybe, cook the same meal, have the video chat on while you're in the kitchen, and both of you could be making dinner at the same time. Here in the Philippines, people just set that video chat on for 2 hours, and they don't really have anything to say. They're just visiting with each other, and they each have a video chat going. It's kind of interesting. You can do that with your family back home, too. We talked a minute ago about planning your travel schedule. One of the things you can do is, if you have the resources, you can gift plane tickets and you can gift travel to come see you, so that, I really wish my kids could see me here in this house and with this view and with this amazing woman and see me living my best life and meet my friends. Just this week, Wednesday was Valentine's Day. We joined 3 other couples at a restaurant here in Cagayan de Oro. Happy Valentine's Day, Chrissy.
Happy Valentine's, everyone.
Thursday, I golfed with 2 other expat buddies, and Chrissy went up with one of the other wives and hit balls at the driving range. Tonight at 5 o'clock, there's another expat gathering at a Vietnamese restaurant. We're going to be there. We have a really nice group of expats, and not many compared to other towns in the Philippines, but you don't need more than a dozen good friends to make you feel connected. But if your family could see that, if they could visit, if you could gift them an airplane ticket and they could come visit, meet your friends, and understand that your lifestyle isn't that different than living in some community in Florida, which would be a long plane ride away from where they live anyway, possibly, they might get a better grasp of what reality is. And, the other thing is, I'm 13 hours ahead of New York City right now. So that's 16 hours ahead of Arizona. That's a really difficult time to manage, to keep in touch. It's really, really hard. You got to catch people in the morning. You got to catch people in the evening. So you got to do some time management. And, you might want to even start talking to them in the early morning when you're at home, talking to them at 9 p.m. when you're at home. You start changing the time of day that you communicate with your family, so they'll get used to that new time zone. Posted on the Facebook group, Philippine Expats, how did you prepare your family? How did it go? So Julian writes that ever since his kids were young, he taught them to live their own lives. I told him early I was leaving the country for travel. So live my own life and don't look back. Jim writes he was in Hong Kong in 1994 and he called his mom to say he wasn't coming back. Philip says luckily he had a brother at 55 who retired and moved to the Philippines. He kind of like trailblazed the way for him. His family embraced the brother and visited the brother, and then he retired at 60 and followed in his brother's footsteps. He says he thinks it's his responsibility to visit his home, not to make his family travel out to see him. Roy says his family was not pleased at all by his decision to move to the Philippines, and he has many grandchildren that have been born since he's been here. He says, I may have to go home to meet the precious little ones. Richard says he didn't make any preparations. He's not trying to be, that guy, but he felt like it's his life and he's going to live it. And he doesn't need anyone's approval. He says his son lives with him and the rest of the family, they pretty much support him. Jeff says his sisters, what's left of his family, wholeheartedly supported him, and a sister and a niece came out to visit him. Jack says he stopped living his life for others a long time ago. He says, my choices are mine. Cliff says his mother was originally from the Philippines, so that made it a lot easier for him. Eden says, oh, no problem. His entire family is supportive. Telf says he moved at 35. He's now 50. Dad hated the idea. Tim says he moved away from home to other parts of Canada first, and so by the time he moved to Asia, it was a lot easier than if he just picked up and left home. He says his family is pretty supportive and it's time for him to go home and make a visit. Eric says his parents are expats in another country, so for him, it's been very easy and they're very supportive. Justin says, I just told him and I've been gone 30 years. Rusty says, not so much. Richard said he left home at 16, joined the military at 18. He's been traveling his whole life. He's not really very close to anybody but his guitar. Rick says no one really had much to say. He'd been telling him for years what his plan was. Malcolm says his family's been very supportive for years and they're planning to visit him soon. Brian says my family doesn't understand why I'm living here and he doesn't think they ever will. He says it's okay. They accept that I like living here. I don't think they'll ever visit. They have the totally wrong idea of what it's like living here. They think most people have nothing and live on dirt floors and no water. Laugh out loud. Well, there's a handful of some of the expats' comments to my post. How can you make the most of it? Well, the number one thing is get a good conversation in early. Broach the subject at a time when they're willing to talk. Give them some time to absorb the information. Don't expect them to jump for joy that you're abandoning them. Don't expect them to say, wow, every father should date a 30-year-old. Don't expect them to immediately embrace the idea. Give them time to warm up to it. It may take up to a year for them to come around. If they see you living your best life, if they see your relationship with your Filipina is sticking and that she's faithful and she's making you happy and they see evidence of this, and understand it's working for you, they will come around. If they love you, they will love you even though you've decided to be an expat. If you can, go home and see them. Don't miss the super important events and stay in touch on social media. Stay in touch with video chat. Keep the channels open. Don't gain a family in the Philippines and lose a family in your home country. That's not a good bargain. You want it all. You want a drop-dead gorgeous Filipina at your side. You want a cost of living that is reasonable. You want a climate that you can enjoy and prosper in, but you don't want to lose your family. So everybody, I urge you to make preparations now. Think about how you're going to manage your family. We're off. It's 6:05 a.m. It's a day in the Bukidnon Mountains of Manolo Fortiche golfing from... It's your first time at a golf course.
Yeah.
If you're thinking of changing your life and you just need someone to talk to get some advice, possibly you've met somebody you don't know if you can trust, you're not sure of travel arrangements, or you have a business you need consulting, I'm available for personalized and specialized consultations, including text and email follow-up.